question isn't, are we going to reach this new age, the age of love? The question is, when are we going to reach it?
Ross says, according to the probability vortices, as they will say, that we're scanning, it seems to be anywhere from 100 to 700 years that it will take.
Shared by 2050, we will be, in a sense, allowed in or an official member of the Interstellar Alliance.
It is our collective destiny to reach this point. No one, no action, and no thing can take this away from us.
So it's going to be very quick, maybe not fully within our lifetimes, but it is possible.
We will be presented with that choice to be part of this collective community.
That's also interesting because Ross calls it the Confederation of Planets.
We can bring the age of love here tomorrow, technically right here, right now. Welcome back to Hidden Revelations. I'm your host, Jason Shurka, and sitting alongside me is Brandon Bozarth and Aaron Abke. And today we're going to be speaking about the New Age. Now, before we speak about what we're going to be talking about in this episode, I want to ask you all a question. And that question is, what comes to your mind? How do you feel when New Age things are spoken about? What does that bring to your awareness? Does it turn you on? Does it turn you off? Are you attracted to it? Or do you want to step away from it because you think it's dark and demonic and filled with false light? Well, in some cases, that may be absolutely true, but it's not the absolute and only truth. There is another side to this coin, and there is absolute beauty in the new age that we are approaching. So when it comes to the pyramid code, closer to the end of the document, there's an age called the Age of Love. And I'd like to run you all through a timeline that is spoken about in the pyramid code and in general, what I've been taught from TLS and Ray specifically over the past couple of years, over the past few years. And it starts with something called the Dark Ages or the Age of Darkness. And from the Age of Darkness, specifically on December 21st of 2012, we moved into something called the Age of Light. And the age coming after the Age of Light is referred to as the Age of Love, what many would call the New Age. Religions have their own terminology for what that is. The second coming of Jesus, the day of the Messiah, nirvana, bliss, whatever you want to call it. The terminology that I've been taught to refer to, although the terminology really doesn't matter, is called the Age of Love, the new age that is coming our way in the collective of humanity as a whole. Now, we are currently in what is called the Age of Light. The Age of Light is all about exposure. Exposing the darkness that's been present in our consciousness for millennia, up until this present day. The darkness that's actually being perpetrated in this very present day with all the chaos that we see happening around the world. However, we will move out of all of this darkness with the help of the energy that we have present in the universe and specifically on Earth in this present moment, in this age called the Age of Light, moving into what we call the Age of Love. Now, many have said, well, wait a second. This doesn't sound like what our religions have told us is going to happen, simply because other words are being used. But as I said before, it's exactly what every story brings us to. A new age using different terminology and a different storyline for what that new age is called. We all believe in the same thing, no matter where we come from, no matter what terminology we use, and no matter what storyline we sort of allocate to understanding how we're going to reach this new age. And on the way, there is a lot of false light. On the way, there is a lot of deception. But much of the truth is being believed to be deception and darkness because many of us are confused. So in this episode, we're going to dissolve the New Age myths. The myths that have been taking us off our trajectory of reaching our absolute destiny. And we're going to do that by redefining and remembering what New Age really means. So with that being said, why don't we start with you, Aaron? Big picture, New Age. I know you come from a background that seems to be very religious as well, and you kind of fell out of that because you saw a lot of falsehoods and maybe certain things that weren't working according to the foundational aspects and spiritual nature of the universe as a whole.
Yeah, this is something that was very common in my religious upbringing that we see a lot of parallels with in our world today, that in the same way that right now the mainstream media, the government, big tech, they'll use this word conspiracy theory for anything that they want to ostracize or demonize, and basically get people to look away from and not investigate or do research. It's a conspiracy. You don't want to look into that because that makes you a quack if you look into conspiracies. We did the exact same thing with New Age growing up in church. If it was outside of our paradigm in any way, I mean, we're talking meditation, even just alternative forms of prayer, alternative forms of worship, yoga, all these completely harmless things, very beneficial things.
Wearing a crystal.
Crystals in general were New Age. Everything was New Age that wasn't Christian. And so it's like, oh, that's New Age. Oh, bummer. Conversation over. I mean, it was a conversation stopper. And so this is a very common tactic of the service to self polarity that in what we were talking about in the last episode, in terms of like influencing perception, they will use terminologies and labels that are distorted on purpose to keep a certain narrative or perception going about something. And I think that's what's happened with this New Age concept, not just from religion, but even within the spiritual community, in that the New Age really points us to where we are going collectively into this age of love. And I love the parallels between the pyramid code and the law of one on this, because Ra describes that in the year 2012, this whole Mayan calendar thing was really the Earth's transition into the fourth density, where, as we talked about, that 25,000 some odd year diurnal cycle, precession of the equinox, every time the planet in third density makes that precession, it's eligible to be magnetized to the next density if 51% or more of the collective consciousness is positively polarized, then it will be. So apparently, we just barely made that graduation in 2012. So it's technically now a fourth density planet. But Ra says, with the caveat that, as we know, in spirituality, nothing, no part of your shadow just disappears. You have to heal it, you have to integrate it and balance it. And so we do that individually in our chakras, and we do that collectively in the densities. The 7 energy centers are like little microcosms of the 7 densities, and we move through them in stages as we grow and develop spiritually. And so right now, collectively, we're moving from this third yellow ray solar plexus chakra into the heart chakra of the green ray, learning how to see each other as one and to love one another, to forgive one another. And so Ra says that there's a transition period that will happen between third and fourth density, where all of that collective shadow work will be done. As the pyramid code says, the age of light. Light is that which illuminates darkness. The light will have to heal our shadows for a certain period of time before we're, as Ra would say, true color green, fourth density positive. And so in this period we're in right now, we really see how, in a lot of ways, it's almost like Mother Gaia has begun to shake the foundations of our planet and is revealing in so many ways, really dramatic ways right now, all of these systems of corruption that have existed for a long time in our world, in our country, in our society, that even myself wasn't completely aware of until now. And like you said, it's very much a blessing in disguise, because we're really burning away all of these old kind of collective karmas from our system. And then we can be purified and crystallized and truly step into a fourth density civilization, or an enlightened civilization that the pyramid code describes is our destiny, but only after we do that collective shadow work.
I love that.
Just one thing I'd like to add before you come in, Brandon, in regards to a potential timeline that the pyramid code partially speaks about, but TLS definitely speaks about. And from the age of darkness to the current age of light, and eventually the age of love, the question is, all right, well, what kind of timeline are we seeing here? Is it in 1,000 years? Is it in 10 years? What's going on?
Right.
And the date that they give is exactly 180 years and 2 days from the commencement of the age of light, meaning that's the absolute deadline. That would mean December 23rd of 2192 is the absolute deadline for reaching this collective shift in our awareness and consciousness. However, and here's my personal motivating factor for doing all of this work from beginning to end. It's the fact that through our freedom of choice, we can actually make that happen a whole lot quicker. We can bring the age of love here tomorrow, technically right here, right now, on a technicality. But we could do it now in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years and 50 years, no matter what. it is our collective destiny, according to TLS and partially in the Pyramid Code document as well. It is our collective destiny to reach this point. No one, no action, and no thing can take this away from us. The question isn't, are we going to reach this new age, the age of love? The question is, when are we going to reach it, and what is going to happen along the way? And part of what TLS tries to do in everything that they do is to mitigate the damage along the way so we can reach the age of love with a tragic catastrophe on Earth. It could be many natural disasters. It could be World War III. It could be billions of people dying from medical intervention and mandates. It could be many, many different things. But we can also reach it just by saying, you know what, we're ready. We're ready. We're going to choose to make the shift, and we're going to do that right here, right now.
Yeah, that's interesting that TLS gives that date, because when they ask Ra, how long will this transition period take before we're a fourth density society? And Ra says, according to the probability vortices, as they will say, that we're scanning, it seems to be anywhere from 100 to 700 years that it will take. So it's like, maybe if somehow the worst case scenario happens and we don't make that deadline, we kind of go through another karmic cycle of purging, these distortions out of us and all of that, until we can actually live in that society where our systems of government, our institutions, our education, everything reflects true unity consciousness.
Correct.
So it's going to be very quick in the grand scheme, maybe not fully within our lifetimes, but it is possible because it's available in awareness, right?
So there's definitely some timeline synchronicity here with Bashar. I'm kind of deducing based on other timelines that he's given. He's shared by 2050, we will be, in a sense, allowed in or an official member of the Interstellar Alliance, which I believe at this point there are something like 500 worlds within. And right now we are a pending member, depending on if we choose officially as a collective to say we want to join hands with you or not. We'll always have that choice. But by 2050, we will be presented with that choice to be part of this collective and actually become an interstellar community.
That's also interesting because Ra calls it the Confederation of Planets.
Right.
And they say there's something like 500 some odd planetary civilizations in that confederation.
Probably just calling them different translations of energy,
Based on that timeline as well, there is an event that I know of, I can't speak of right now, but there is an event that may not be in exactly the year 2050, but just around that time that if and when that does happen, it will change our world collectively for the better in terms of revelations that will probably bring us to the point that you just said.
And this is, you were told by who?
This was part of what happened on the February 6, 2020.
That you can't share?
No.
Okay.
That's too bad.
I
have to wait to find out.
I wonder what it could be, because what Bashar shared is when we have full open contact and we join as a family, in a sense, we will give you your entire history, your entire real history. We're seeing all of it from up here.
It has to do with that, by the way.
Interesting.
Wow.
So there will be a full disclosure from the beginning.
We're getting warmer.
To that point.
It definitely has to do with that.
Synchronicity. So that's the first timeline, is by that time, things have to occur by that time. That means the end on a large scale of war will be ended. There might still be some conflicts. There might be some people getting in fights or whatnot. It's not like everyone is guaranteed to be absolutely peaceful by that time, but the end of large scale war. And he said something like a global understanding that supporting everyone in the society is beneficial to the whole, and that includes themselves. So we'll start to see efforts of, they don't have their needs met, they don't have their basic needs. Let's all pitch in. Let's all figure out how we can support this society here, because that has to come back and support all of us as a whole. There'll be this new understanding as the foundation, really, of unity, right? Which is what Ra and the Pyramid Code talk about. We also know from Bashar that apparently 300 years in our future is when we will officially be integrated as the sixth hybrid race, humanity, meaning at least 300 years in the future. It doesn't mean there won't be any humans on the planet, but it will mean we'll have at least a global experience of a blending of humans and hybrid extraterrestrials, creating the new hybrid offspring. And I think
on a conscious level,
on a physical level,
but totally open.
Yes.
Okay.
Totally open. And the world, I mean, the major cities will be taken back by nature. The tides of the ocean will be very different. The 5 levels of mastery will be taught and given freely. The ships will be here far before then, but the ships will be available. You can go off planet and really spread amongst the stars if you wish. I mean, we'll have that kind of sight. That's 300 years in the future. So to think of 2192, we must need at least 1 or maybe 2 generations of interbreeding to have a society that is primarily there. Let's just say there's more hybrids than there are humans, because we're starting to blend the same way I've shared before as in the body. Cells go through mitosis, they split. Eventually, groups of split cells can also come together and create meiosis and create a one unified, more complex whole. That's essentially what's going on. Is we are, according to Bashar and the hybridization agenda, coming together to create a more complex or evolved organism. So to think of that timeline of 300 years in the future, that must be starting at least by 2192 to allow for such a world.
Absolutely.
And to me, that is marking maybe what in the raw material would refer to as beginning to go through the dual activated bodies and becoming more crystalline, because as we mix with these beings that are more crystalline, we start producing bodies that are more fourth density in a sense.
Right. Yeah. The evolution of the body keeps up with the density of the planet in perfect accordance, because it's the vibration of the photon we're talking about. So a green ray vibration is the description of the true color that comes out of that vibration of a fourth density frequency. And so, yeah, open contact really is like the great catalyst for us entering this new age of love. And that's not going to happen until extraterrestrials, who we see here already, witness that we have made certain transitions in consciousness, like ending war, probably like this kind of medical apartheid stuff and these big magnitude levels of corruption happening. You know, we're still saying yes to these things collectively, as we've talked about on this show. And so they're not going to come and violate that free will and force us to stop these forms of corruption and stop going to war. But they are doing what little they can do, which is to show up in our skies everywhere in undeniable ways, increasingly, as we've seen lately, to sort of say, hey, you know, what level of awareness do you guys have? Right. We're literally in your skies all the time, hanging out with you. Do you notice us? Are you aware of us? And the more we become aware of them, as Ross says, the main purpose of these crafts showing up is to open our minds to the mysterious and to become aware of infinity, which is often best described as the mysterious, they say. And so, yeah, we really have to, they're sort of holding out the baton for us at this point, but waiting for us to reach out and grab it.
Yeah.
So in regards to the age of love, I want to read a portion from the Pyramid Code, because I think it just describes it so beautifully.
Yeah.
And then I want to sort of phase into the idea of religion and what that looks like in a time like this, because I think that's partly threatening to many people and exciting to many other people.
Yeah, for sure. Some cool stuff about the evolution of religion too.
So in the Pyramid Code, it says the following. Imagine living in a world without time and space, without walls, without borders, without wars, without disease, without vaccines, without toxins, without drugs, and without doctors. A world of love, brotherhood, and harmony. A world of happiness, wealth, eternal abundance, and equality. A world without a false religion and a fake book of laws that controls you. A world in which you are the law itself. A world of justice. A world without false rabbis, false priests, or any other corrupt religious leaders. A world without corrupt lawyers and without corrupt judges or politicians. It is doable, it has already happened, and it will happen again. It is better that it happens today rather than tomorrow. We are already on our way to the age of love and the era of endless information and consciousness. We are not far away. In an instant, we will learn the mysticism of water, the mysticism of the spirit, the power of the woman, the power of thought, the power of the soul, the power of prayer, the power of forgiveness, and the Pyramid Code with the codes revealed. This can all happen right here, right now, with full transparency. And I find that to be so beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because it's a perfect world, but it's not something that hasn't been done before. And that brings us to our episode called Forgotten History. Probably why they teach history as the beginning and first and foremost thing in the initiation process in ancient Egypt, and the Baraka process, as they called it in the royal palace, was to show us and to show them at the time that we've already been at this point. This is nothing new. And it's ironic because we call it a new age, but really it's the age that we all came from. You know, the original divine race lived just like this. And the way I see the age of love is really this completion of a cycle, saying and showing us the fact that we're returning to exactly where we came from. We're returning to our source. That's why history is so important. And in many cases, our future already happened. We're just repeating it in a sort of lens that we don't necessarily remember.
There's a quote from the Law of One where they ask Ra, what does a fourth density civilization look like? What will the world be like at that state of vibration? And Ra basically says we can best describe it in the negative, but essentially as we evolve into this, heart chakra living, we develop naturally abilities of telepathy through empathy, like we've talked about. And as telepathy evolves, more and more of these societal systems, like we just described here, become possible, where there's truly like a shared mind, transparency, vulnerability. And that's where a real enlightened civilization becomes possible, I think. So I'll just read this quick quote here. Ross says, we ask you to consider that as we speak, there are no words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what it is not and approximate what it is. Beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited still until we become without words. So they're trying to stress just truly how beautiful and remarkable that kind of state is in the fourth density. They say, that which fourth density is not, it is not of words unless chosen. So telepathy. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. Ra describes that the fourth density is the body of a green ray vibration is a hybrid between a chemical and a light body.
Just like Bashar calls it, a quasi-physical body.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. It's, if you've seen Avatar, or there's another movie I'm blanking on where the bodies are a bit more transparent looking and brighter in color, more vibrant in their colors, maybe blue skin or something. That's an example of what a chemical / light body might look like. And then at the fifth density level, it's pure light. So it is not of disharmony within self, so perfectly balanced in the chakras, no distortions. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. And that's because of the social memory aspect in fourth density. We know each other's thoughts and minds perfectly, so it's not even possible to be in conflict. Yeah, can't hide anything, and we're one mind, so what I do to you, I literally do to myself.
Right.
Approximations of positive statements, it is a plane of a type of bipedal vehicle, which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thoughts of other selves. It is a plane where one is aware of the vibrations of other selves, so feelings, emotions, highly empathetic. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. That's another big point of fourth density, is it's one of service to others, where the primary way that fourth density beings polarize, like the Essassani, is by traveling and visiting other planets who are in jeopardy or trying to make these transitions and helping them out. This is the way that they gain polarity in fourth density. And it is a plane striving towards wisdom or light, which is the fifth density. It is a plane where individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. So differences are celebrated rather than points of discrimination. So big difference, yeah?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wow. Very cool. It's literally saying the same exact thing in different words.
Yeah. It's neat.
So, the biggest question is, what's going to happen to religion? There are so many people identified with their stories, their idea of God, and it's very threatening. And because of that identification, many people say, I don't even want to hear that. It sounds beautiful, but it's against my identity. And if that dies, I die because I identify with that thing, that story, that terminology. So there's another quote in the Pyramid Code that says the following: I am sure that exposing the truth will move the people of Earth into a new and higher consciousness that will lead the entire universe into the age of love and the world of truth much quicker. In this world, race, color, culture, and religion, and I emphasize that on purpose, will be irrelevant. It will be a world with no religion except for the religion of love, in the age of love and the world of truth. So one of the main things that this excerpt really said is religion will become irrelevant, religion as we know it, and the religion will be the religion of love. And again, that sounds very threatening to many.
Yeah.
How can we sort of deal with that, especially for those on the extremely religious side, identified with their religion and only their religion?
Right. So Bashar has described this as, when you say the religion of love, this does not mean everyone is homogenous. It means that there will be an evolution of understanding that will cause certain religions or spiritual paths to transform, where they all contain an underlying understanding that is unified. But the way they express the understanding, their points of view on the understanding will still be different, because every person is a different perspective. There's going to be as many, you could say, New Age religions as there are people, because it's just going to be now a matter of perspective. What will cease is the arguing or the disputes that your perspective is more valid than mine.
Understood.
So what will transform is, wait a second, all points of view are valid. And actually, the only thing that we really have in common is that we all have a different point of view. So what unites us is our diversity. What unites us is our different perspective, but it will all come from that same place of love. And Bashar talks about how this idea of the second coming is, in a sense, a realization of just that, a realization that we are all one. There's so much heat that idea, the religion's only going to be love. Oh, that's trying to homogenize it's actually the opposite. It's celebrating one another. And the second coming is the realization, wait a second, we're all one. That means we're all equally valid. That means you're just as valid as me. If I'm the one, you're the one. There can't be separation. There can't be inferiority or superiority or invalid. And our collective realization of that oneness is the second coming, versus the single individual's realization, which, Jesus Christ, the archetype, or the Buddha nature, or the Krishna spirit. Bashar's take is, we will all realize our true nature as that Christ, or as that principle of oneness, which is what Bashar would define that as. But about religion specifically, what's going to happen to religion? Now, what I just described was a positive path, like positive polarity. That's an integrative path. That's literally where the religious point of views start to integrate with more universal understanding and wisdom. We are in a splitting, Bashar calls it the splitting prism. It's like two Earths occupying the same space, and it's more than two. Technically, it's infinite, but there are two primary, because we love duality here on planet Earth. And there's an actual splitting, so to say, physically and energetically, of two different versions of Earth being formed. And Ra, I know he would talk about, like, well, if you polarize, you're going to wind up on the fourth density version of Earth. If you don't, you're going to repeat third density. It's really pretty much the same thing that Bashar is saying, is there's this splitting. And for those that are positively polarized, it's akin to being able to see individuals that might be very negatively polarized, but see them through a glass wall. And that glass wall, you can't see it, but it actually is a wall that is creating this seemingly separation, not really separation, but it's like being able to see someone on a different version of Earth through a window, and they can't actually affect you. They can't actually really touch you anymore, because there's this vibrational buffer in between, and you're just like peering into a different reality, even though it seems like the same Earth. And he was saying a lot of the earthquakes, a lot of things going on the planet are actually Gaia's way of expressing the splitting in earthquakes and seismic activity and whatnot, as just an as above, so below type of phenomenon.
Which is what disease is for us, expressing toxins out of the body.
Exactly. Yeah. So he basically says by 2025, we're going to be pretty crystallized on a certain trajectory of energy, whether it's a more positive or negative polarized version of Earth. You can still jump, but he likens it to two train tracks. Right now, we're in what Bashar would call the eye of the needle. And I think the book of Revelations talks about a splitting as well. I'm not too sure, but I know there's a lot of other texts that talk about this splitting earth and Armageddon. And this is what they're really talking about, a transition from one earth to another, so to say. So imagine two train tracks, one more positively polarized, one more negatively polarized. As time goes on, they get further and further and further apart, and it becomes a little more difficult to jump from track to track. So from now until about 2023, I believe it's 2023, is this eye of the needle. Choose what track you want to be on. By 2025, you will pretty much be crystallized on what version of Earth you're polarizing towards. The negative track, apparently, according to Bashar, religion will actually double down on its exclusion principles, on its principles of righteousness, on its principles of invalidating other religions. That's how the negative path has to do it, whether it's with religion or with any point of view, any perspective in the universe. They have to continue the exclusion of others and get more rigid and more rigid and more rigid.
Got you.
So in a sense, those are the two paths that Bashar has described.
Yeah, that's interesting. In the New Testament, Christ said, and this is in the book of Revelations, I will be with you even to the end of the age. And that word age is aionios in Greek. And it represents, back in ancient times, they thought of time more in cycles or ages based on astrology, signs of the zodiac. And each zodiac sign, I believe, is 2,160 years. Times 12 is 25,900 some odd years. So that's the precession.
25,720, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. The precession of the equinox divided by 12 is each age. So Christ was really speaking about that next age, the age of Aquarius, which is now what we've entered in as of 2012. And that sparks the beginning of everything we're talking about now, humanity moving into this next cycle. And so I think as we move into this next cycle from Pisces to Aquarius, the negative polarity always takes over by force, by control, by taking things down through violence and force. The positive polarity changes through completely peaceful means based on resonance. So whatever stops resonating just drops away. So it's a totally peaceful takeover, you could say. And I think we're witnessing that happen in religion right now. And I mean, I can really speak to this as somebody who grew up in religion. When I was a kid, I feel like even, 8, 10 years old, going to church was so much more prevalent in our society than it is now when I'm 32 years old, because my generation, I watched my friends stopped going to church one by one. It didn't resonate with my generation like it did with my parents. And then even more so compared to their parents' generation. And, kids growing up these days are just so much less interested in going to church and reading the Bible and things like that. But we're seeing this resurgence of the metaphysical and people being interested in spirituality, because really what these religious archetypes are containing and pointing to are these transcendent spiritual truths that all these ancient texts speak of. And so all these world religions are really a lot more like culture, in the sense that they're all different expressions of that one infinite creator. And when you get behind that, you can really start to enjoy, as I have come to, all world religions, Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, especially for me, Christianity, in a whole new light, when you see them through the lens of mysticism rather than religion. Religion is the sort of the pursuit of the divine through external means, following rules and rituals and dogmas and worshiping idols. And mysticism is pursuing the divine through internal means, meditation, contemplation, prayer, and so forth. And so it's the mystical element that unites all world religions. And that, in terms of what's gonna remain when religion dies out, that core truth of mysticism will remain. And actually, I think, will truly elevate and exalt religion to its highest potential, in that we can see so many different angles, as we've talked about, points of view of this same one truth that lives within all of us. And it's when we can get beyond the symbols and the labels and the words and the literalism and see what they're pointing to, I think we can actually use religious symbols, whether it's the Virgin Mary, the cross, the Buddha, Krishna, all of these gods and goddesses and symbols represent, as we've said, different states of consciousness, different perspectives of God, of the creator. And so we can use them as that. And I think that's actually very powerful because, as we know, we can't conceptualize the divine. We can't, no matter how hard we try, we cannot put words to it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it is helpful to have symbols and religious archetypes we can point to.
Like training wheels.
Yeah, absolutely. That serve as something that allows us to go beyond them and experience the divine in a way that words can't take us there.
I feel if we can do that without losing sight of the fact that it is one eternal divine source, 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Thing is, when people lose the mystical nature behind every religion, it becomes the literal aspect of what they're looking at.
Fundamentalism.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's where the magic is lost, and it becomes this sort of robotic, just over and over.
Becomes
and over
a control
again.
mechanism.
Exactly.
Right. And, I just wanted to mention something you said here. In A Course in Miracles, they say at the highest expression of religion and psychotherapy, they're really the same thing. Religion and psychotherapy in their highest, purest form are the same thing. What does that mean? Psychotherapy says, when I investigate or inquire into a negative belief or identity that is causing me pain, and I learn how to let that go. In other words, I heal, you could just say I heal trauma, you could say. In the moment of letting go, what does one experience? In A Course in Miracles, they would say revelation, or a miracle, right?
Yeah.
A shift in perception. It's,
salvation.
Salvation. And in that moment, there is revelation, which in the Course it says is so deeply personal, we can't use words to describe it. It's awe. And what is that awe? In the Course, they say it's when we go from living horizontal to vertical. Us and the divine overlap in what Eckhart Tolle calls the now moment, the Course calls the holy instant. And whether it's meditation or prayer, they all bring us into that holy instant.
And that's the cross.
There it is.
There's the symbol of the cross.
Exactly. And so religion at its core is meant to take you there. Because we describe that state as what? Love, oneness, heaven. So it's fascinating stuff.
No, there's so much beauty behind it.
This is where the importance of the don't know mind we talked about in the last episode really comes into play. We really see it, is that in these ancient worlds that religions were formed in, they didn't have, a lot of these were pre-science worlds. They didn't have ways of literally describing things the way we do today. So they used metaphor and symbol and story and parable. And so even things like how the devil, the archetype of the devil comes about.
Right.
The devil's describing the human ego. We all know that now. But reading the Bible, when you literalize it, it seems like this real entity that they're describing who lives somewhere in a location, right? And it's like, how else would an ancient world have been able to personify this voice in my head that's always beckoning me to do evil and be selfish? It must be the opposite of God, the anti-God, the antichrist, the devil. And so they come up with an archetype. And if you think that you know what that thing is, it's Lucifer, it's a real being. I was taught this as a child. The devil he's out to get you. He's a big bad wolf. Then I don't actually have the ability to see what that symbol points to. And this is really like Joseph Campbell territory, right? The power of myth is that all myths contain a kernel of human truth in them. If we can hold them loosely and say, I don't know what this really means, but I'm going to look at it and sit with it and contemplate it, and suddenly its true reality begins to be known to us. This is true for the second coming as well. A Course in Miracles says, the second coming is the awareness of reality, not its return. And that's one of the reasons I love the Course, is that it uses so many of these religious symbols and reinvents them in metaphysical or new age terms that you go, wow, like all those biblical things that we threw in the dumpster when we left Christianity actually have a lot of meaning to them.
Right.
In that this Christ is returning, he's coming back in physical form. That's how we literalized it. The Course says, no, that second coming is the awareness of the Christ nature in us. All of a sudden, that second coming that I threw in the dumpster has a lot of beautiful meaning to me.
Yes.
And I can see it in a more metaphysical light.
Are you familiar with the Whore of Babylon? Is that like a...
Vaguely.
Bashar talks about that being one polarity of the brain, of the mind, that it's like the temptress archetype. And
Call that Jezebel.
Yeah. So these are like personified in the Bible, and maybe there were these people. But again, pointing back to, we can all relate to that. I mean, just check your lived experience. We all relate to that one voice that says, just cut this corner. It's not saying do it, hurt this person, harm this person, lie, but it's just, it's not a big deal. It's the idea of the ends justify the means.
Mm-hmm.
So Bashar is like, well, what that passage is talking about is that archetype that all of us have. And because, like you said, we don't have language to say, this is an aspect of my consciousness.
Right.
You just personify the archetype as a person, because if you're not even aware of consciousness, some people will go, oh, that's just a demon speaking to me.
Yeah.
It's not me. It's happening. I'm controlled by it. It's called the unconscious mind.
Yeah.
That they weren't aware of. So I just wanted to give that as an example of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I wanted to add on to something you said before. I share a quote from Rays of Light in this case, but in regards to things like the second coming and what that actually means, being the remembrance or the realization of awareness instead of the coming back of awareness.
Yeah.
Whether you call it that second coming or even like the days of the Messiah, there's parts of that narrative that talk about how the dead will arise from the dead.
Right.
And what I've always thought that actually means, through the lens of it just meaning a new state and a new age of awareness and consciousness, is just us realizing and remembering very clearly that the dead never died. And in that new awareness and new consciousness of the second coming, the days of the Messiah, whatever you want to call it, we will be in a collective state of awareness and consciousness to completely understand and be aware of the fact that the dead are not gone. And there's this link between the two worlds.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, amazing.
So I just wanted to share a quote from Rays of Light in regards to something that I found beautiful, actually dictated by Rabbi A.A. himself, explaining the difference in 2 sentences between religion and spirituality. And when I say religion, we're talking about modern day religion used as a tool to not necessarily expand, but more so control. And it says, religion expects you to learn from the experience of others. Spirituality expects you to gain your personal experience. Religion encourages you to explore the opinions of others and accept them as your own. Spirituality expects you to explore, organize, receive the truth, and have opinions from within yourself without external influence, which is usually based on fear. And it's like, when I read that, I'm like, boom. Because that's the difference.
Yeah.
One is contractive, the other one is expansive, at least how it's used today. One is just meant to control, the other one is meant to empower and completely expand beyond what we think is possible. So I just wanted to add that at this point in time because of the differences we were sort of speaking about in regards to religion as we know it today and spirituality.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest ironies I saw in religion with this New Age conversation is how Christianity always paints anything from, Buddhism, Hinduism, Eastern culture as New Age, meditation, new thought, expanded consciousness. It's all New Age. And we're as if we're the original religion. That's new hokey pokey stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that stuff predates Christianity by thousands and thousands of years. You guys are the new kids on the block.
Yeah.
But even more so than that, what is Christianity at its pinnacle of the Gospels describe? This new age of Christ returning. Everything is pointing to that. The book of Revelations talks about it. There's the end times. And then after the end times is the new Aeonios, the new age where Christ comes and rules and reigns. And it's like, this book is describing this new age that we're talking about. It's almost hilarious in that this second coming of Christ, we know, is the returning of Christ consciousness, which is synonymous with fourth density consciousness, unity consciousness. And there's a passage that says, a famous passage of the New Testament that says, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Christ is Lord. So again, that's a sort of an archetypal way, mythological way almost, of describing this new age where as we read in that quote from the Law of One, it's not even possible to have disharmony anymore. Everyone acknowledges unity at that level of consciousness. That's the new age.
I love that so much. And I feel like that understanding literally starts to demystify a lot of the projections, a lot of the stories. Well, the new age is this, the new age is that. Now, I think in the people that have exposed some of the mistranslated ideas of the New Age are accurate. There is there's such a thing as false light.
For sure.
Yes.
But how the New Age, at least in our understanding, our definition of it in this episode, how that's been defined is incredibly different than what these people that have this distorted view of the New Age is. And I want to make that difference. But I'd love to hear from you before I go into busting some of these myths. Aaron, how would you describe false light?
Well, I think false light is essentially the service to self path.
Yeah.
It's the negative polarity. We typically use that word to describe a term might be like charlatan gurus, for one example, who pose as a guru to get women to sleep with them or something.
For personal gain.
Yeah, if you sleep with me, I can make you enlightened. That'd be an example of false light.
Right.
But really, that's the service to self path at its pinnacle. That's the best description of how the service to self path operates.
Mm-hmm.
They distort the light, they distort the truth for personal gain.
Right.
There is no such thing as a negative polarity that they walk in like some mustache twirling villain. I'm here to take you over and enslave you. Like, that's not how it works. They come in, even Ra describes this. Negative beings are typically very beautiful in appearance.
Mm-hmm.
They have a great smile, slick back hair, well dressed, very well spoken.
Look at this guy.
This guy. I'm describing myself. Like, they know how to say all the right stuff. They know how to, hook, line, and sinker, get you to be like, yeah, I'm nodding my head. I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then in some way they bring in just a little bit of coercion,
right,
to say, now give me some of your free will and I can give you what I just described.
Right.
As a charlatan guru does, as a corrupt politician does, as a military dictator does. They promise you glory and power and whatnot,
right,
in exchange for your free will. And of course, they never give you what they promise.
Right.
And so we see this in little ways in the spiritual community, where people might use spiritual truths to, sometimes we call it spiritual bypassing,
right,
using a spiritual concept to justify not looking at some kind of darkness within myself, but also to create suffering for somebody else, or to push off one of my issues onto somebody else. These are all different examples of false light, where if you're spiritually knowledgeable enough, you can walk around with this shield barrier of spiritual concepts around you that nothing's getting through me. I can explain everything away, in the way that I'm always right at the end of the conversation, and you're always wrong.
Right. So to look at the other side of the coin, if you, let's just say hypothetically, you were this false light person, and you were like just being a false light, whatever false light people do, right?
Yeah.
Which again, if we really look at that, it's like we all have false light in us. It's called believing a negative belief. At the end of the day, I'm believing something that's creating fear. I'm not addressing it. So I am reacting to it in addiction and deceit. We all do it. It's our natural way of exposing the darkness. A lot of us have to play it out to become aware of it. So,
also to recognize it. You recognize it because you recognize it in yourself.
100%.
That's huge.
So if I'm sitting here going, you're this false light person, and I'm angry and I'm upset, I am literally becoming false light in that moment. I am projecting the fear or the pain or the guilt or the anger that is coming up within me onto you, and saying that you're the source of it. Saying that if you don't change, I'm not going to be okay.
Yep.
See, the people that have an issue with false light are often the ones that are gaslighting or experiencing a type of bypass, because the ones that don't have a problem with it, it has no control or power over them. It doesn't disturb them. They're 100% in alignment with their truth, and they might say something or they might share something with someone, but it's from love. It's from unity. There's no judgment. There's no bashing. So I see this a lot on both sides. It's like everyone at some point is going to defend, lie, exaggerate, do all the stuff. Okay. And on the other end, there's these, maybe whether it's someone in religion or someone, I don't know, and identified with something going, well, don't go over there. They're a bunch of false light. The moment this person tells other people not to do something, that's a false light principle. That's let me control you. I think I know what's best for you. So it's so hypocritical, a lot of this conversation.
Yep.
But I want to use the understanding that we're coming to of, okay, well, if false light is based in fear and division and projection and denial, all of these things, really just a lack of understanding, then, well, the opposite of that is what light is. We could say understanding, unity, compassion, these things that emerge when an absence of resistance you're experiencing an absence of resistance.
Right.
All of these qualities, you don't create them. They are there. They're you.
Right.
From that place, we look at some of these, the false light principles or the New Age principles that really gave the New Age a horrible name. Mm-hmm. One of them being, the all truths are true. We talked about this briefly in our last episode. All truths are true. So I'd love to hear this from you first, Aaron. What do you think, when someone says, well, all truths are true, so that's going to lead to a horrible society. That means, what's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, one of the qualities of light is that it's unconditional. Mm-hmm. It doesn't choose what it shines on. So that's why a true light being would never say, don't go over there. They're false light. They're bad. They're invalid, mm-hmm. because that's making a value judgment, which light doesn't do that.
Right.
So that's, like you said, a projection of false light to even notice that or say that.
Right.
And so these things happen with other eternal spiritual truths, like A Course in Miracles would say, you give everything all the meaning it has.
Yeah.
Which this was another one of my issues with the Bible, the literalism of the God wrote this book. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's literally written by the Holy Spirit. So every word is literally true is what mm-hmm. they would always say. Mm-hmm. And my problem with that is, but what interpretation of that word? Because words don't really have any one unmoving static meaning. There's
right.
many ways of interpreting words, and even
symbols,
sentences,
right.
stories, statements. So it's like, whose narrative should we read the Bible through? Whose opinion, whose bias, what lens is the right lens to read it through? Mm-hmm. That's what we're pointing to when we say all truths are true, mm-hmm. in that every point of view in the universe is equally valid, mm-hmm. in that the universe doesn't say you're not allowed to have that experience.
And let's just think about our lived experience. Have we ever experienced that? The universe coming in? Oh, Brandon, you're not allowed to do that.
No.
Come on, course correct. And literally a being coming and be like, hey, I'm going to remove you and put you over here. You're not allowed to do that.
Well, the angel with a
but
fiery sword.
People may come and say, well, I was punished by God.
Right.
And that also may not be a fundamental truth. It could be your interpretation of the experience, mm-hmm. meaning what's the first thing most people do? And I'm speaking from my own experience because mm-hmm. I used to do this. Mm-hmm. Every time something bad happened to me, mm-hmm. I said, what did I do wrong? Right? Mm-hmm. But through going through my experiences of I dislocated this shoulder a bunch of times and I got a staph infection in my leg and in the hospital for a long period of time, my whole internal narrative shifted from what am I doing wrong and why am I being punished to what are you trying to show me and mm-hmm. what can I do to further sort of improve myself and stick to the path, destiny, and purpose that I came here to fulfill. Mm-hmm. And it's saying sort of the same thing in two completely different ways. Mm-hmm. One is coming from the narrative and consciousness of punishment. Mm-hmm. The other one is coming from, the universe is not against me. God is not against me.
It's like teaching versus punishment.
Exactly. It's mm-hmm. actually with me, right. trying to teach me and show me.
Yeah.
And are there consequences to certain things? Yes, but consequence doesn't need to be a negative or a positive thing.
Right.
It's just a thing. It's a consequence. That's it.
It's based on how you make use of it.
Exactly.
Yes, how you respond.
Exactly.
So like a positive being would never say, don't go over with those people. Don't listen to them. Because it's like, well, maybe you need that experience.
Right.
If there's something in you that's resonating with that, mm-hmm. there's something you need to work out over there.
Yeah.
So the response would be, well, if you find it to be in alignment with you, check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's learning there for you.
I always say it's like, think of a time where you either had a traumatic experience or something extremely challenging, maybe in your childhood. Now, looking back, if you've healed that, you look back and go, God, I'm grateful that happened. There were so many gifts. I really needed that experience. Mm-hmm. If you've got to that place within yourself, wow, I've needed everything to happen exactly as it did mm-hmm. for me to be sitting here right now. Wow, that's pretty amazing. That's like this misinterpreted, in the New Age, everything's perfect as it is. And it's like, well, we're not saying that this person abusing that person is perfect. We're saying mm-hmm. that is what it is.
Like that's the best thing that could ever happen or something.
Exactly. We're just saying it is what it is.
Yeah. And it will eventually lead to that soul's highest good.
Exactly.
At some point or another.
At some point mm-hmm. through eternity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if we've experienced that, okay, I've needed that to happen. It's not like we could have in our, that's our hindsight. It's not like with foresight, we can go, man, I feel like I really need some trauma next week. And that's going to give me all of the codes.
How can I attract some trauma?
Exactly. So we're always getting what we need. It might not be what we want.
Yeah.
But if it happens, we either argue with reality and have stress, or we join with reality and we have love. And that's just separation and unity, negativity and positivity.
Yeah.
But I just want to bring this back to all truths are true, a meaningless universe. God is everything. Because these can get blown out of proportion in such a massive way. There's this narrative about some of these New Age concepts, and they're not new. I should say ageless concepts.
They're as original as they get.
Yeah.
Yes.
About these ageless concepts. The universe is meaningless. Well, if the universe is meaningless, why don't you just go kill people? Who cares?
Right.
It means nothing. So only an individual that is so disconnected from themselves, in so much pain, and is so confused that they would actually believe, wow, my suffering is going to end by killing you. Only a person with that level of distortion would believe that that is okay. And of course, it doesn't mean it's okay. It just means no one that is actually coming from a place of love, which is what we're all talking about here. Unity, fourth density, which unity isn't something you learn. It's not something you become. It's what you are. It's like the blue sky. It's always this homogeneous, united thing, but there's clouds above it. And sometimes there's a little hole of the sky and you go, oh, look, there's that love, that unity. Oh my God, I want it. Oh, it's gone. And we think that the sky, the blue sky, the happiness comes and goes. But in reality, it's the clouds that come and go. And the unity, the love, it's always there. So as we realize that within ourselves, wait, I am a whole person. I just need to find and learn how to let go of the beliefs and perceptions that say I'm not, right? Our undoing, in a sense, unraveling of the ego, you could say. What you're left with is love and unity. And if I feel completely united with you, hurting you makes no sense because I'm hurting me.
For sure.
So people that really understand and really look at these principles, it's built in to the nature of nature. There's like a built-in proof system is the way that I see it. It's all truths are true, meaningless universe. Yeah, great. You can decide the meaning. You can decide what's true for you. And when you come from love, all you can do is extend love. All you can do is extend unity. You can't codify it. You can't say this is the right way to extend unity. This is the wrong. You can't give a moral code because reality is spontaneous.
Yep.
Decisions are based on context, and context is always changing. So we will only experience the beauty of this new age of a new age of awareness, or a new age of experience, relative to the degree in which we understand it. And in my direct experience, if I don't understand it, some of these fundamental principles, I'm in suffering, I'm in lack. When I'm understanding these principles, I'm in love. And I go, how could that be dangerous? To be in love with life, with each other. The only reason that seems to be dangerous, believing or applying these principles in your life, is because you don't understand them.
Right. So let's look at another one of those archetypes that we misunderstand, as you said, because we literalize it and we try to attach conceptual meaning to it, is this whole idea of if you confess Christ as Lord, you go to heaven. If you don't, you go to hell.
Right.
Somebody from Christianity will say, oh, the meaningless universe teaching is New Age. It's not a Christian teaching. But ultimately, that's what that is pointing to, in that, as we know, law of attraction says, the universe is perfectly just in that what you put out is what you get back. Right. It's the law of karma. So to confess Christ as Lord, if we know Christ represents the unity consciousness of fourth density, what it's really saying is, if you confess Christ, you acknowledge unity as the highest truth of the universe, you will go to heaven. You will create heaven. You will experience heaven. Right. And if you deny the Christ, you will go to hell. You will create a negatively polarized experience of reality. So it's like, what this is pointing to is right there in the Christian teaching, that you give everything all the meaning it has, in that it's an empty stage waiting to be performed upon. That's what it means, right? It's it's a blank canvas waiting to be painted.
Right.
And that's what the creator wants to experience. If it had pre-given meaning or purpose, it actually wouldn't have any meaning for us. So that's what makes it beautiful.
I love that. And it reminds me, this is the last one that I have here, is that when you said we're projecting our own kind of traits onto, to like personify religion or project our sense of self onto it, this personal relationship with God. That if I don't understand God as a person, then I can't relate to it. So what's your take? Especially because you were raised with this very personal Jesus, right? Literally a person relationship to connect with God. I think in the course they say for the people that aren't ready really or to relate to God in a way that is more universal, Jesus is like a go-between. It's like, well, if you can't really go there, go here and you'll be just as good.
Right.
So can you connect how you kind of transformed this, going from Jesus being this personal personification of a God to finding your experiential connection with God as the I am?
Yeah, what Christianity did really well for me was what I would call the feminine polarity of spirituality, the love, the devotion of the divine. We worshiped God for hours and we got into these intimate experiences all the time, but we were missing the masculine polarity of wisdom and understanding of the divine nature.
Right.
Christianity's theology is very screwed up and distorted. So when I left Christianity, I went headlong into the Eastern tradition, which tends to be hyper masculine in Buddhism and Taoism. And I understood the divine nature in a whole new way through non-duality and all these things. But at a certain point, it became a little bit empty for me in that I didn't have that sort of personal relationship with the divine that I had known my whole life. It was like, I know all this amazing knowledge and spiritual truths, but somehow they're still not saving me. It's like there's an essence missing. And it's really that essence of oneness. Oneness ultimately isn't a concept. It's not a conceptual knowing. It has to be an experience. And that experience of God, of oneness, is best described through what we call devotion in the Hindu tradition. Devotion is this idea that like God is a woman, God is a lover. You only know God through this intimacy, like you become intimate with a woman you love. And the feminine polarity represents that warm intimacy of the divine. And we actually come to know the divine best through that intimacy. And so really what we're talking about is knowing ourselves. But because you are infinite, because you are eternal, it's impossible to truly know yourself as yourself. And so religion can serve as this beautiful mechanism to sort of externalize God into a form of whatever that is, Krishna, Christ, Buddha, Allah, whatever. And then you worship it, you love it, you adore it. And because it's just a projection of you and your infinite nature, you now can experience it sort of from a subject-object relationship. And so there's this beautiful concept described by many ancient gurus, and it's in the Vedas, called devotion after liberation. And they write about how even after I am liberated, I'm self-realized. I know that I am that. Still give me that devotion. Like I desire only to be your devotee.
Yes.
And it's beautiful.
I love that so much. And we were talking before about the intimacy of I am is the most intimate that it gets. Yeah. And I love how Rupert Spira, really well-known non-duality teacher, goes, have you had the experience of experiencing or knowing that, I am 2, I am 10, I am big, I am small, I'm old, I'm 50, I am whatever it may be. What is after the I am is all of the changing content of our experience, including our body, our age, our height, all this stuff. But what's the one fundamental thread throughout our entire experience that we all have?
Being, I am.
Being, I am whatever. So when you can turn your attention and go, what is the nature of that I am? And this is really the essence of non-duality. What is the nature of that I am? And you land on, well, any words can't describe it accurately because it's beyond concepts. It's like concepts are objects in the room, like the furniture. The space is the awareness. You could change this furniture all you want. This doesn't do anything to the space. You could take
Yeah.
down the entire room. The space is still there.
Mhm.
So when you know yourself as that space, well, we go, what are the qualities of that space? Well, it's what is in the absence of every concept, of everything. And in the absence of all, at least let's say negative concepts, what do you call that? Being in the absence of all negative concepts. You call it happiness.
Mm.
I can't hold on to any negative concepts. What arises? Peace. People mistake pleasure for peace. That's what peace is.
Mm.
So it's in that state. It's like, wait a second. I've been looking for that. It's like Rupert says, get up and take a step towards yourself. And you go, I don't know how to do that. That's because there's nothing we need to do to realize that. It's a seeing or an acknowledging. And because religion or many spiritual traditions puts salvation on an external form or a doing God's work, whatever it might be, your back is turned to that I.
Mm.
And so it's like, I have to do more. I have to be more devotional.
I have to earn it.
Yeah, I have to gain. And you never fill that void. And all you have to do is turn around, in a sense.
And we would have this concept of if I don't worship enough, then God is somehow unpleased with me now.
Right.
I have to earn favor again. Like God's like, hey, come on, you haven't worshiped me in a while.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that
God
takes,
doesn't have an ego.
right. God has the biggest ego ever in Christianity. But it's like that gets rid of the intimacy.
Yeah.
The intimacy doesn't say like, come on, love me.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of intimacy, right?
Yeah. You hear a lot, well, in the New Age, you claim that you are all God. You're God. I want to give my little take on that, and then I want to hear yours. And Jason, you're welcome as well. You are God. This is, again, where this multidimensional perspective comes in. You can't have, in my experience, a non-dual kind of experience of yourself while remaining in a linear type of frame of the world, a cause and effect type of world. Because, the I amness says everything is arising now. There's not necessarily a cause for it. It's just here right now. That's our direct experience. So when they say, well, you're God, I go, well, okay, well, what is God? And from the perspective of either the non-dual traditions or just consciousness, really, God is consciousness. God is that presence, that awareness, that consciousness that we all share. So when I say I am that, it's like, okay, I can be aware of that part of myself that is consciousness. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm experiencing myself as a part of that. I am not, because I'm experiencing myself having a body. So from this physical perspective, I go, well, no, right now I'm not experiencing myself as God, as all that is, as the infinite. Mm-hmm. I'm experiencing myself as Brandon, as this physical body, which seems to be an extension of that, right?
Yeah.
So you go from, well, it's kind of this and that. It's like, well, I could say at my true core essence self, what is the only fundamental thing? This consciousness, God. But am I always experiencing myself as that? No. So I'm Brandon, but I'm also not. So it's another paradox. It's another this and that that is so challenging for people to understand. So really briefly, what is your take on that? If you have anything else you want to add?
I just think it's synonymous with saying only God exists. So anyone who goes around saying, I'm God, it's probably their ego saying it.
Right.
But
it never feels natural for anyone to
right.
God.
It's like, how do I make that authentic?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if somebody asked me, are you God? I would have to say yes, only because so is everything. Right. There's no arrogance in that. And what I find that the paradox is that the people who get offended by that typically are like religious people. And, looking at the Christ story, for example, the Pharisees got very upset with Jesus for claiming I and the Father are one. And they say, how dare you claim to be one with God? And are you greater than our father Abraham? And they take up stones and all this. And it's like, look at you thinking you're God. Like there it is. The ego thinks it's God already. The ego thinks the world revolves around me. I'm always right. My opinion matters the most. That's the ego's version of I am God.
Right.
And so when someone like a Christ figure, a Krishna, makes these kind of claims of oneness with the divine, the ego hears it and then projects the ego's meaning onto it. Says, how dare you claim that? Really, it's only true for me. And it offends me that you're saying it.
Right.
And so actually to say I am God, or to know I am God rather, is actually the most humble idea you can possibly have, because it eviscerates the separate self. The ego can't exist within that, because nothing separate can be there in that knowledge of God.
Right.
I always just look at my heart in terms of its physical essence of what it's doing. And the question that arises is, well, where's the battery? Who's making it beat? What's making it beat? And even when we look at nature, if you look at a flower and how it blooms, what's making it bloom? You know, you look at anything and you say, what's making that happen? Where's the energy coming from? You can get all scientific with me and say ATP is created and produced, and that's great.
And I'll just say, but how?
But how?
Or what's before?
Where does it come from? You know, and there's no real answer to that, because giving an answer to that would be to know, meaning limiting all other possibilities. And you can't limit the limitless. It just won't work. So the whole I am God, so long as it's coming from that consciousness, is, like Aaron said, the most humble thing you can say.
It's pure.
Many people today come from the other side of the equation. And that's why I think and if they don't, the individual listening to the individual saying that is in the consciousness of not necessarily understanding what we just said here.
Right.
So it can sound arrogant, but it's the exact opposite. Because just like the pyramid code says, God exists in everything and every being, alive, not alive, animate, inanimate. It is everything. It always was, is, and will be. And that's it. So that's how I see it. I always start with, at least in this question, where does everything really come from? You know, and the fact that we can't answer that means that you are a part of that very thing that's limitless as well, which means you are God. So with that, I'd like to close with just a really powerful quote, an excerpt from the Pyramid Code that really sums all of this up in terms of this new age that we're leading into. And it says the following: in our most connected and true form, we are able to identify with every living being mentally, spiritually, and energetically. Imagine talking to animals and loving them instead of eating them. Regardless of our personal ideas and wishes regarding this transition of an era, it will happen. This energy will express itself as it is the manifestation of the energy emanating from the divine source and from the collective divine self. With the help of God, this will all happen in the near future. The power of collective unity will always accompany us and help us in the most difficult times. Over the past 8 episodes, we've brought in many themes in regards to the Pyramid Code without really going in depth into the story from beginning to end. And we did that intentionally to be able to highlight certain themes and show the synchronicities between the Pyramid Code document and many other sacred texts out there in the world today. With that being said, we hope that you read the Pyramid Code document now through a new lens, a fresh pair of eyes, if you will, and see it with a new level of consciousness, read it with a new level of awareness, and see where it takes you. Our intention is never to give you a conclusion of what something means, but just really ask questions and raise questions to help you think. And maybe you can bring something new to the table that we didn't think of, that we didn't see. So with that being said, this is the completion of season 1 of Hidden Revelations, all about the Pyramid Code and how it connects to many sacred texts, in this case being the Bashar material and the Law of One material. We thank you for watching, and we look forward to continuing this series with all of you in the near future. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time here on Hidden Revelations.